On imom.com, we share ideas, insight, and inspiration. We do all that here too by sharing the best kind of stories. Mom stories. We're all at different ages and stages, but one thing we have in common is that we're striving, and sometimes struggling, to love our children well. It's the iMom Podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the iMom Podcast. I'm Abby with Megan, Susan, and Chloe, and this is the week that I confess to... I told this story to my boss, and he's like, you got to tell that story in the podcast, because this is an example of when good kids mess up, and that is the name of today's episode. So my parents went on a vacation. This was 1994, and I remember it was 94 because Forrest Gump came out. They left us money. They left us...
Wait, how old were you?
I was 14.
Okay.
My sister was 16. Yep, my sister was 16. I was 14. They went to San Francisco for 12 days.
And they left you alone?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
But my grandfather lived next door.
Oh, okay.
So my grandpa lived next door. They left us money for groceries. They left us movie tickets. We went and saw Forrest Gump, so that's why I know all this. This was 12 days. And my mom was a teacher at my high school. And I wasn't in high school yet. I had just stepped foot off the campus of my Catholic school growing up, right? And then I was going into ninth grade public school. My mom said no parties. My sister was going into her senior year. I was going into ninth grade. My mom said no parties. We did not have parties, plural. We had one 12-day party. There were people who did not leave our house
Abby.
For 12 days. And I was going to save the fact that I was 14 till the end, but I shock myself that I was 14. Now, I didn't do bad things. I didn't drink. I didn't do anything like that. But it was mostly boys that did not leave our house for 12 full days. And they sat on our back porch, drank beer, played poker, smoked weed.
Oh my!
Where was your grandfather?
Yeah,
next door.
Grandpa?
Grandpa was next door. But it came to a point where and we had people parked down the block, so that there weren't cars out front of the house. But I'm not even my sister and I went to the movies, and people stayed at our house while we went to the movies. And we came home, and they're still there. And we're like, hey, Jeremy, hey, whatever, these, friends. And my mom knew all of them because she was the teacher at the high school. But there was one...
These kids are brave. These kids are brave.
Right.
Yeah.
One night, I think my grandfather caught on, and he called the cops on us. Dang. So we answered the front door. There's some cop at the door, and she's like, you guys, what's going on here? I mean, a bunch of teenagers. And I don't even remember what we said, but I did clarify. She's like, because we got a call from next door. And I think my sister was like, that's our grandfather. And she was like, oh. And she ended up leaving because she knew obviously it was more than, just a neighborly thing. This was also a family thing. And my grandfather was a great grandpa. He loved us. It was not like we had a problem in our relationship, but he was like, who are these girls? These are not my granddaughters. Why are you behaving like this? So then he called my mom on the cruise ship she was on. And my mom was so mad at him for calling because it was really expensive to answer the phone on the ship when she had to pay like the $100 ship to shore charge and stuff like that. So anyway, there's more to the story. But I constantly remind myself of the fact that at 14 years old, I was in my home with my sister. There were kids that were drinking and using drugs and sleeping in, boys sleeping in my house. If I had a 14-year-old daughter right now and I found out that there were boys from her school sleeping in, I'm flabbergasted thinking about that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck were you thinking?
Were you getting up and going to school every day?
It was summer.
It was summer.
Yep.
Wow.
It was the summer between my 8th grade and 9th grade year. Yeah. And like I said, I was fresh out of Catholic school. The plaid skirt was still on, basically. And I was doing this. And my sister, I'm like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
She was a little bit more rebellious than I was. But the point of the story, I was a good kid, but I maybe made some bad choices, or I let my sister, make bad choices around me and I didn't stand up to or whatever. But there were other things that I did in college that I was probably like, probably shouldn't have done that. But I was fortunate enough not to get caught, or if I did get caught, it was by my parents and not the police. And now I find myself worried that I will overact when my kids misbehave. You know, like I won't remember that good kids make mistakes and that I was not a bad kid because I did this one or two things. Like, so how do we parent our kids and set rules and boundaries, but also not forget that they're humans and they're exercising decision-making and that sometimes they're going to make a bad choice. So first of all, I need you guys to confess something bad that you did growing up, because I had a 12-day party at age 14. No, you didn't do anything wrong. Nothing. Chloe?
I did incriminating things. I'm like, what can I share on this podcast? That's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, I didn't do a lot of bad stuff in high school. I did more bad stuff in college, but I did some stupid stuff in high school. I'll say one story. It's funny. I've told my mom pretty much everything I've done, like, after the fact, just because I'm like, we're so close. But I don't think she's heard the story. So, Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I did have one of those, like, let's steal the liquor from my mom's cabinet. And my mom, like, wasn't a big drinker. So it was like these disgusting, like, peach schnapps. Yeah. And we just took it and we went to this Sweet 16. It was disgusting. And yeah, that was probably like the youngest, dumbest thing I did because we were really young.
Megan, were you going to say something?
Why is peach schnapps everyone's like first drink? It was
my first drink. Why is it mine? I'll confess mine.
Like, where is it with peach schnapps? I've never even had peach schnapps since then.
Literally, same, Megan, same.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's mine, which is so funny because we didn't even think it was that bad, but different times. Again, we had a house, a second home, and in the Keys, and my parents used to go there every weekend. And once my brother and sisters and I got old enough in high school, they would let us stay home. But even before that, because that was like 15, 16, I had a friend whose dad was my pediatrician. And so, of course, my parents trusted them and everything. Yeah. They had the most fun, wild house. So the girl in the family that was my age was exactly in the middle of their 5 kids. So she had 2 older sisters. So there was always interesting things going on there because, of course, the doctor always worked, the pediatrician, and the mom was like a party girl. So the mom used to let my friend and my other friend, I won't even name names because I'm still friends with them, but take her Lincoln Continental, which if you don't know what that is, it is a boat. I'm talking huge. Like they don't make cars this big. And at 13 to 7-Eleven to pick up things for her.
Oh my gosh.
And my friend could drive it so well, but we didn't think it was bad because we had her permission and everything. And, the older sisters always had not peach schnapps, but tickled pink. Or Boone's Farm. Ugh. It was terrible wine.
It was terrible. Boone's Farm is?
No. Boone's Farm, yeah. See, I'm aging myself, yeah. And they lived on the golf course and they had this huge trampoline and we would just go out there and have a bottle and But again, here's the thing, with the mother's permission, so we never really thought we were being bad.
Yeah.
Now my parents would definitely have thought it was bad, but of course I was staying at her house and they trusted her.
Megan, did you confess yet? Does your mom know your bad thing?
Oh, I have so many bad ones, but I just feel like they're not. Mom, I'm thinking of the time I had to call you from the emergency room.
Yeah, tell that one.
Yeah, tell that one.
No. I don't, no.
Well, so I guess, my first question then would be, how much of your past should you share with your kids? Like if you are talking, because I can imagine me trying to talk to one of my kids who isn't, they're not a discipline issue necessarily, and they mess up. Do you say, you know what, I did that when I was your age? Or like, what do you share and what do you withhold?
Yeah, I've wondered this a lot because I had pretty straight-laced parents. Like they didn't do a lot of things. And I feel like I was so much more rebellious as like a teenager and young adult than they were. So like I was really scared to tell them when I messed up. And like honestly, I didn't confess a lot of times. They just found out because I think that God was protecting me. Mm-hmm. But I've wondered that myself because I've made a lot of mistakes and I want my kids to know, like, because I'm I really care about making the right choices now as an adult because of that. Like, I've really grown out of that. I get really anxious about making the wrong decisions. So yeah, I don't know. I wondered that.
I never did a lot, and here's why. It was really more about the comparison thing, because my brother got in a lot of trouble and I didn't. And my parents were always comparing us, and that wasn't really, instead of just parenting him, they were saying, and so I never tried to compare my kids, like, why aren't you more like one or the other? And so I never really brought up me either. I mean, the standard is not me or your siblings. It's let's talk about what was this a wise choice for you?
Yeah, that's good.
I think it depends on the child too. I mean, you can probably tell one kid something that you did that was bad, and it will just teach a lesson. Another child, it might unintentionally give them the license to do the same thing. And, you know, they might say, oh, well, if you did it, I can do it. I think that you have to know, you know, before you tell them, you have to discern whether or not it's actually going to be helpful, or if it's just that confession, like to clear your conscience or to connect with them. But is it really going to be helpful in helping them make better decisions going forward?
And I think sometimes if you're going to talk about those things, it's better to do it not in a situation like this where they're in trouble, but let's talk about temptation. We're all tempted in different ways, and it's key to know your way of being tempted. I was tempted when I was your age in this way. You're probably going to be tempted in a different way, but what is your way? Figure it out now so that you can safeguard against it.
And I'm imagining there's probably a way to show empathy and like understanding for an issue without giving, you know, the details of a mistake you've made, right?
I think so. I mean, I think that just saying, you know, I've messed up too. I've made mistakes, that kind of thing, I think is enough. You don't have to get into the details.
I think that's important if you have that perfectionist child that is beating themselves up because they made a mistake. We all make mistakes. I've made mistakes. You've made mistakes.
So what about with younger kids? I mean, we've kind of talked about teenage and college years, but starting with younger kids, I know that for me personally, we just got a couple emails in a row right before Christmas, got a couple emails within 1 week about my younger son kind of acting in a way that to me is out of character. And I really struggle with like, how hard do I come down on him? Because I'm like, he's a good kid. This is not him. So do I get firm to nip it right then? Or do I say, you know, this isn't him, I'm going to let it go? Like, I'm really struggling with how to not come down on him so hard that it makes him feel like I'm, you know, coming after him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the situation with the child, but your child's at that great age where it's not dangerous at this point, and so it's a good learning opportunity. And so because he is a good kid, you can just simply talk about it and say, hey, how's that working out for you? I notice you're doing this. This is not like you. You're a good kid. Tell me what's going on. Whereas if it persisted, then you have to escalate it. Like, and I think in our consequence calculator, we have that kind of thing. Is this a first time occurrence? Is it unusual? You just talk about it. If it keeps happening, you have to escalate it. This happened to be with one of my girls. She's little, and they went to a private school. It was a very strict school. And at the time, if you did something wrong, you went to the wall. That's what they called it. They literally put you in the corner. And it was her first year, K4, and she got in the van and she said, Mommy, I went to the wall today. Almost like she was excited. And I looked at her, I was like, what? We don't go to the wall? Why did you go to the wall? This is not a good thing.
Yeah.
What happened? And she told me, and then, you know, her face kind of fell a little as I went through, this is not a good thing. We don't go to the wall, blah, 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 blah. So a week later, she gets in the car and a little bit more hesitantly, Mommy, I went to the wall today. Okay, let's talk about what was going on. Well, Ariel Mermaid was playing through my head and I had to sing her out. Okay, you know, she's 4.
Right.
This is her playful personality coming out that she has to learn to conform to the rules of a school.
Yeah.
So, you
That's
know,
sweet.
how serious is it? And she already had a consequence, but we did have to keep having those conversations. And she learned. Merrills do not go to the wall.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
I think too, it's an opportunity to ask some questions, you know, instead of just thinking, okay, what's the appropriate punishment, or do I need to punish my child for this? It's, you know, contemplating the why, you know, why did you do this? And they might not have the exact answer. But I'm wondering if there are certain questions that you can ask that help bring out the why.
Well, totally. And I always like them to think about, how did this affect other people around you? So let's say the example of, singing out Ariel Mermaid in the class. Well, why did the teacher send you off? Because I was making noise. Well, what does that noise do to the other people around you? They can't concentrate. And that's what everybody does. What if everyone started singing out? There'd be chaos in the class.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they just have to put together, what does this do, in loving your neighbor
Yes,
to
that's
the
good.
other people around you?
Yeah. Because just asking, why did you do it? It probably is just going to lead to a series of excuses, whereas how did it affect other people?
What was the natural consequence? Did it hurt you? Did it hurt others?
Yeah. I have a friend who, this is back to the drinking thing, but I have a friend who found a bottle of vodka in her kid's hamper.
Jeez.
And instead of freaking out, she asked him, how often are you drinking this? Who are you drinking with? I want to know, let's have this conversation. And I think that it's about getting curious, when you see this thing happen, getting curious about the why and, who might be influencing your child, what they're watching that might be influencing them. I think that it's an opportunity to learn,
Well, and as they get older, it teaches them to process. So a lot of young kids' mistakes are just impulsive. Oh, I see it. I want it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It looks great. They don't think beyond why we have this rule of why we don't run with the scissors. They don't think about it. They just run with the scissors.
Yeah.
And so, but as they get older, like in the case of, teenagers, they really need to start thinking for themselves, okay, there's a law about this. Why is there a law? And if I break that law, what could the potential consequences be?
Right.
Is it worth the risk?
And I think we want our kids to always know that they can talk to us. So even if you have, a 8-year-old right now and you're like, well, we're not dealing with this type of rebellious these years, I think starting this conversation now where they know that they can always come to you and talk to you about something and you're not going to freak out or you're going to listen or you're going to ask questions. I think that this is how you start the conversation now, and it just kind of never ends, and you just keep having that conversation with them.
The reason we have a question at the end of every iMom email is because at one point when my kids started hitting middle school, I always had so much more information than a lot of other moms. And a couple moms asked me, why do your kids talk to you about all this stuff? I said, because I've been asking them questions the day they were born. And they're used to it. They're not pulling away from me. They're used to answering questions.
Yeah.
We talk.
Yeah.
And so the reason we put a question at the end of every iMom email and why we have so many discussion printable questions is, if you don't start engaging with your children and getting them used to that kind of conversation when they're little, they're not going to start when they hit 13.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can you show your kids that they can talk to you about anything? I think that it's more than just, part of it is always asking questions and listening to them. But another idea is to have a family, you can call it whatever you want, but maybe it could be like your cool word. And that's the word that they know they can say. If they need to tell you something that's difficult or scary or, that they got in trouble, they can say the cool word. And then okay, I'm going to brace myself because something's going to happen right now and I'm not going to freak out. Because at least let them get it out. You can take a moment to process and they know that, we're going to have a moment of peace before there's going to be a punishment or a lecture or something like that. So have a family cool word. Don't make any topic taboo. I think that some kids will come home and be like, well, so-and-so said this in class today. And mom's response is, you're too young to talk about that. You're too young. And maybe they are too young, but to shut them down and to say, this is not something that we're going to discuss is just telling them we're not going to talk,
Yeah.
I think another thing that Mark and I did a lot that we had to do is, when you do get in a situation and somebody gets in trouble and it's a teen, it's a serious thing, figure out quickly which of you is going to get more triggered and that person leave the room. Because when you have two parents who are not overreacting, but reacting emotionally to a child in a different situation, it just shuts them down or makes them angry. And so we found having just one person kind of
That's good.
delve into it,
Yeah.
Or whichever one of us was not going to react the most in that moment.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to react. You want to help them process and figure it out. And when we adopted our older kids, this is something we had to use a lot because they just did make a lot of bad choices.
Mm-hmm. I think too, watching how you talk about other kids making bad choices is pretty powerful. You know, if you say your 15-year-old daughter comes home and says that another kid got caught sexting, you know, a girl sent a bad picture to her boyfriend, and you say, oh, I'm not surprised that girl, I can tell by the way she dresses that she looks like she's, you know, going to do that. Or just saying something unkind like that or judgmental like that, you're sending this message that, you know, what you think of kids that make bad choices, that they are bad kids, right?
That's
and and just hearing that judgmental tone is going to tell your kid, what will they think of me if
and then they'll hide it.
Yes, exactly. And then they'll hide it, which you kind of hinted on earlier, I think, Susan, talking, or maybe it was you, Chloe, that said, you know, I didn't want to disappoint my parents. I felt like they were pretty straight-laced. And so did you hid things? Did you lie about stuff that you did because of that?
Yeah, I did, but I've got caught for everything. Like literally, like even just randomly, like my mom ran into my friend's mom at the grocery store and she thought she knew something that I had done, and she told my mom, and I came home, or my mom came home and was like, you have something you want to tell me?
Yeah.
Like I just kept getting caught. But I will say, like, there was one thing I did confess, and it was like a really, really big thing. There was no way I was going to be able to hide it from my parents. And like their reaction was just like, it was the best thing in the world. Like I was really scared to tell my parents, and like my dad just like, we were on two separate couches, and like my dad just like jumped over to me and like gave me a hug. He didn't say anything. He just hugged me.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, we really didn't talk about it. We talked about, okay, where are we going to go from here? But like, we didn't talk about what I did.
Yeah.
Because he knew I was ashamed of it.
And it's done.
Yeah.
It keeps reminding me of that phrase, you know, we're not raising kids, we're raising adults. And I think that as they do things wrong, there's just such a profound lesson to learn about, like, how do you want them to carry this moment into adulthood?
Yeah.
You know, not just as future parents, but just empathetic people and people that make better choices and think about how they're, like you said, Susan, how their actions affect other people. I think that there's something really big about that.
I think something when they're little, too, that you can emphasize that you reminded me of, Chloe, is I used to say, you know, everybody makes mistakes. But if you lie about it, we can't help you.
That's
and
good.
So just, I'd rather hear the mistake than find out later. And I would tell them, too, I pray that you get caught.
Yep.
I pray all the time you get caught. So I'd rather you come to me and tell me the mistake than I hear it from somebody else and I have to come to you about the mistake and a lie.
So I have a little bit of a story about that. So I'll make it quick. So like I said, you know, hid stuff, I lied, and then I got in trouble in college, and it was big trouble. Like I got suspended from school. It was not a good situation, and I got caught, and obviously, like I said, I got suspended and stuff. And I was before we got our, I don't know, ruling from, I went to a Christian school. I had to go to a whole council. It was a whole thing. And my friend who I was with, she lied about it. And she said she wasn't there. She wasn't doing what we were doing. And I told the truth because I've learned just through everything else that I'd been through, like I just would have rather have told the truth in that situation because I think my parents would have like responded well. And I'd already made up my mind, like once I had to go to the council and everything, I was like, I'm going to tell my parents everything. So I told the truth, and I, you know, got the harshest punishment out of everyone there because I was honest. But like I wasn't, you know, I wasn't harmed in the longer run of life, you know, like one of the things is I got my soccer scholarship taken away. Well, it was reinstated the next semester because my coach was like, I know you're a good kid. You made a mistake. You know, I got a job even though like my GPA suffered because I was suspended and I missed.
And just so you know, Chloe confessed her GPA to me when she interviewed me.
I did. I'm a much more honest person now because the thing is like I would rather tell the truth and get in trouble than get in trouble and then get in trouble for lying.
Like, but I respected that.
Yeah,
I respected that she told me why her GPA was low.
Yeah,
and
so
I love that.
Thanks. Yeah, and I learned from, you know, all that. And I will say that situation, though my punishment at the time was so harsh, and it hurt seeing like my friend who wasn't honest like get to play those games I missed and like not suffer a punishment. I'm like, I'm so thankful I told the truth in that situation, because God wasn't going to let like I got the punishment I needed. God wasn't going to keep what I needed in life from happening because of that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, and thinking about the whole raising adults, not raising children, your parents want you to be a person. Your I don't know what your GPA was. Your 2.5 GPA doesn't matter as much as you telling the truth in the workplace. You know, like nobody cares about your GPA when you're 27 years old. They care if you lie or tell the truth.
Yes,
so
that's good.
You know, like a lot of these, the whole message of this episode, when good kids mess up, okay, is their mess up something that that bad grade, the failing the test, the whatever, is that something that's going to affect them in 20 years? Or is there a teaching moment here where you can say, let's tell the truth?
Yeah.
Let's blah, 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 whatever.
That's good.
One article that I wrote on iMom that I actually really enjoyed writing, because it was pretty eye-opening to me, was Do Strict Parents Make Sneaky Kids? And in my research, the website axis.org, it's a really great website. They write great content for teens. They shared this. They said, ask yourself the question, am I raising a sin concealer or a sin confessor? And just that idea of, am I raising a child that will come to me and talk to me, or a child that wants to hide things? Because rules don't make sneaky kids anything any more than laws make citizens commit crimes. You know, what does make your child sneaky or rebellious is when they can't talk to you because you won't listen, you won't empathize, or you won't acknowledge their point of view. And so they think they have to be sneaky because coming to you is pointless or will make you, you know, clamp down even harder. So, you know, when you have a child, a good kid, or just a kid that's going through a time where they keep messing up or keep making bad decisions, I think it's a chance for you to reevaluate, you know, how approachable am I? Am I a parent that will listen? Am I a parent that will ask questions and try to help my child grow and not just tighten the reins or issue a punishment? So good things to think about.
Yeah.
Just one other thing I do whenever I feel like my kids are about to tell me something, I literally pray, okay, Lord, help me receive this in a way that will move it towards a more positive end.
Oh, that's good.
Because you don't want to react like your face. You don't want to say the wrong thing. And sometimes it's hard to know what to say. So I love that your dad just hugged you in that moment, you know, when you don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's good. All right, tell us what you do when, you know, you have a good kid that messes up, or maybe you were a good kid and you messed up. How did your parents handle it? Email us via the link in the show notes, and we'll also include the consequences calculator and some of the articles that we referenced today to help you out. And thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the iMom podcast. iMom is the motherhood program of the nonprofit organization Family First. Along with our fatherhood program, All Pro Dad, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the iMom Minute, by going to imom.com/subscribe and get tons of great ideas, insight, and inspiration. The iMom podcast is hosted by me, Abby Watts, along with Susan Merrill, Megan Tigner, and Chloe Blumenthal.